It was 2 a.m. when loud bangs shattered the silence. The door flew open. Flashlights cut through the darkness, but the officers had no idea the woman they just woke up was one of the FBI's best-trained agents. The city was quiet that night, wrapped in the kind of deep silence that only comes in the early hours of the morning. In a modest apartment on the east side, Mia Carter sat at her desk, her lamp casting a warm golden glow over stacks of papers and an open laptop. She wasn't just going through any paperwork. These were confidential case files from the FBI. Her current investigation involving a dangerous network she had been tracking for months. To her neighbors, Mia was simply the polite, quiet woman who rarely spoke and kept her blinds closed. They had no idea that behind that calm demeanor was a highly trained federal agent who had spent years in the field. Outside, on the otherwise empty street, the low hum of engines approached. A group of police officers in dark tactical gear gathered at the curb, their radios crackling softly. They had received an urgent tip about a violent suspect hiding at this very address. Adrenaline ran high as they checked their weapons and rehearsed their plan. No one questioned the intel. There was no time. Back inside, Mia leaned back in her chair, sipping the last of her coffee, unaware that her life was about to be turned upside down. She heard nothing at first, no footsteps, no voices, just the steady hum of her laptop fan. Then, faintly, she caught the sound of boots hitting pavement, fast and deliberate. A strange unease stirred in her chest, but before she could stand to check the window, the quiet street outside filled with shadows. She had no idea that in less than a minute, her front door would be shattered open, and her training would be put to the ultimate test. It happened fast, so fast that Mia barely had time to register the first sound before the second one hit. A deafening bang rattled her apartment door, the kind that makes the walls vibrate and your heart jump into your throat. She froze for half a second, coffee cup still in hand, before instinct took over and she set it down slowly on the desk. Another bang followed, louder this time, splintering the wood. Someone was trying to force their way in. Her mind raced. No one had called. No warning. No reason for anyone to be at her place at this hour. Then, without a final knock or shout, the door gave way, exploding inward under the force of a steel battering ram. The hallway flooded with bright flashlight beams that cut through the darkness like white-hot knives. Shadows moved fast, armed. Figures in black tactical gear surged into the room, their boots heavy on the hardwood. "Police, get on the ground." One of them barked, his voice sharp and commanding. For an ordinary person, panic might have taken over the sudden invasion, the aggressive shouts, the blinding lights. But Mia wasn't ordinary. Even as adrenaline surged through her, she noticed details. The patch on their shoulders, the way they held their rifles, the exact number of officers now inside her living room. They were trained, but so was she, and she had no intention of making a single wrong move. She raised her hand slowly, her expression calm, her voice controlled, ready to speak. But in that tense moment, before a single word left her mouth, she knew something these officers clearly didn't. They had just burst into the wrong home. The room was chaos, voices overlapping, orders being shouted, flashlights darting across every corner. But Mia's breathing stayed slow and steady, just as she had trained herself to do during high-pressure operations. Her years in the FBI had taught her one golden rule: in a dangerous situation, the calmest person usually has the advantage. With her hand still raised, she turned her head slightly, making sure each officer could see her face clearly. "I'm Special Agent Mia Carter," she said firmly, her tone cutting through the noise. The officers hesitated, their weapons still aimed but their stances shifting with uncertainty. She continued without raising her voice, but with the kind of authority that demanded attention. "Badge is on the table. To your left." One of them glanced over, the beam of his flashlight landing on the shiny gold emblem resting beside her laptop. The energy in the room shifted. They weren't looking at a suspect anymore, they were looking at someone who knew their world, their training, and their procedures. Mia's eyes stayed locked on the lead officer, reading him like an open file. His jaw tightened, his grip on his rifle loosening ever so slightly. She could almost hear the gears turning in his mind as he replayed the events that led them here. "Ma'am," he started, his voice quieter now. "What's going on here?" Mia didn't answer immediately. Instead, she let the silence press against them, forcing the weight of their mistake to sink in. In her mind, she had already pieced it together. Bad intel, wrong address, and a team that had been too rushed to double-check. They had stormed into the home of an FBI agent, and now, they were realizing it too. The tension in the room hung heavy, almost visible in the narrow beams of light cutting through the dark. The lead officer finally lowered his weapon, his eyes darting between Mia's calm face and the badge glinting on the table. "Stand down," he ordered, his voice sharp but tinged with embarrassment. One by one, the other officers eased their grips, their breathing loud in the silence that followed. Mia kept her stance, hands still raised, her gaze steady. She wanted them to understand the gravity of what had just happened. The lead officer stepped forward, his boots creaking against the floorboards. "Special Agent Carter," he said slowly, We've made a mistake." Mia tilted her head slightly, her expression unreadable. Yes, she replied, her voice cool. You have... He exhaled heavily, rubbing the back of his neck. Our intel said a violent suspect was here. Same building number, wrong street. The words hung in the air like a bad confession. Behind him, one officer shifted uncomfortably, clearly wishing he could disappear. Mia lowered her hands at last, moving to pick up her badge. She didn't slam it down or raise her voice. Her composure was more intimidating than anger could ever be. One wrong address, she said evenly, could cost a life. Yours, mine, or someone else's. Her words landed like a stone in still water, rippling through the group. No one argued. No one dared. The mistake was undeniable, and the weight of it pressed on all of them. For a moment, the only sound was the faint hum of the streetlights outside. The raid had ended, but the consequences of their actions were far from over. The officers lingered awkwardly in the doorway, unsure whether to speak or simply vanish into the night. Mia stood near her desk, arms folded, her expression calm but sharp enough to cut through their shame. The lead officer finally broke the silence. We're sorry, Agent Carter. This shouldn't have happened. His words were sincere, but they didn't undo the damage. Mia had been on the other side of these moments before. She knew how split-second decisions and bad information could lead to chaos, but she also knew mistakes like this could get people killed. She stepped closer, her voice low but firm. Apologies don't bring back lives. Before you kick down another door, make sure it's the right one. The officers nodded, each one avoiding her eyes as they filed out. The sound of their boots faded down the hall, followed by the hum of engines starting outside. The street returned to silence, but it felt different now, heavier, as if the night itself remembered what had just happened. Mia closed her broken door as best she could, the jagged wood scraping against the frame. She picked up her badge, turning it over in her hand, thinking about how close things had come to disaster. In her line of work, she had faced armed criminals, dangerous raids, and high-stakes missions, but never had danger come crashing into her own home without warning. Sitting back at her desk, she opened her laptop again, the glow of the screen lighting her face. She wasn't angry, but she was determined. Somewhere out there, the real suspect was still hiding, and Mia knew the night wasn't over for her. But as for the officers who had stormed her home, they would carry this mistake as a lesson they'd never forget. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, comment, and share to spread the thrill. *, subscribe to Deep Wounds for more gripping, true and fictional tales that keep you on edge.